So we're all going to gather. If you are living in different households or bubbles, I'm going to ask that you maintain a certain distance. Oh, careful. There are several ways that we mourn in the Jewish tradition. There are at least three that I know of: to weep, to be silent, and to sing. And the first way is to weep, even if our tears are for ourselves, for our ache of loneliness or anger, for pain of loss and love, for they are still sacred. So, the second way is to be silent and enter into silence, to recall a shared moment, to remember a word or a glance, or simply to miss someone very much and wish that she could be here. So as I chant from the book of Psalms, I'm going to chant Psalm 23 first in the Hebrew and then read it in the English. I invite you to just be alone with your own thoughts, thinking about Evelyn, who we are paying tribute today. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai Eloi, lo echsar bino deshayar b'tzeini, al mei menuchot yinaleni, nafshi shovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gama ki yeilech v'geitz al mavet, lo yirara ki ata imadi, shiftecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai, dishanta v'Hashem eroshi kosi revaya, ach tov v'chesed yirdafuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai leorech yamim. Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want, giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit, guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. We're here to honor and pay tribute to Evelyn Moglove, who in Hebrew is named Chaika Bat Hershel Vehinda. And I mentioned that there are three ways to mourn. The third is to sing with those gathered together, to sing a hymn to life, a life that still abounds in sights and sounds and vivid colors. And we sing the songs of our beloved, and we trust in our heart that there is a God who hears the bittersweet melody of our song. Eli, 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 Eli. Evelyn was preceded in death by her husband, Harold, and daughter-in-law, Karen. We reach out with sympathy to her family, to her children. Honey Sue is joining us from Connecticut, and to Floyd, who's with us. To her grandchildren, Sean, Joel, Alan, and Arlie, and to her great-grandchild, Lucia Rose. Did I get that? Evelyn was born in Winnipeg on August 21st, 1922. And she left this world on May 26th, which corresponds to the 16th of Sivan. She grew up as the baby. She had 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and she was adored by all of them. Evelyn married at a very young age, at 19, and she met her Beshert in high school at St. John's. I believe they started to date when they were 14. They were married during the war, and Harold was stationed in the Maritimes as a mechanic in the Air Force, and then was sent to Rivers, Manitoba. As Floyd shared with me, these two, they were just 2 lovebirds and had the most loving relationship. Evelyn was a housewife, a great mother, and her children grew up very close with her and to their maternal grandmother. Evelyn was an outstanding cook and baker. In addition, she was a fervent Zionist, and she was able to visit her family in Israel. She had a strong familial orientation that clearly had an impact on her children, and they continued to demonstrate their love for one another in a way that was provided for them by their mother. I want to also note that Evelyn was a private person. She had a great level of humility. And at this point, I want to share some notes from Honey Sue. Again, because of the situation here in Canada, she was not able to travel. She wrote these words: "Our mom, what can I say? She was nicknamed Scotty by her older brothers because she was the youngest of 6 in the family, and because she was little, barely making 5 feet in her adult life. She had a big presence and wore the pants in her family. My mom and dad met at 14 and were deeply in love their whole life. They had hardships in their life, but stuck it out, mainly because my dad always took her side, right or wrong. She was a balabusta. She cooked, baked, sewed, and entertained, and most of all, her family always came first. My last visit with her, we sat at the kitchen table going over her famous recipes and just hanging out and talking about everything under the sun. It has been a sad and frustrating time trying to come to see her, but the memories we have of her are beautiful, and we were truly blessed by God to have her 98 years." I want to conclude this part of the funeral by offering a little teaching from our tradition. This part is not from our tradition. William Shakespeare wrote, "What's in a name?" Right? And by contrast, one's name defines one's persona. In our tradition, we say, "Kishmo Kenhu." As is her name, so is she. This is what the Talmudic sages teach us, insisting that externals, and most certainly the term to which one is expected to answer and by which one is identified to the outside world, must influence one's internal state of being. So Evelyn's Hebrew name, or her Yiddish name, Jewish name, was Chaika, which is a derivative of the Hebrew name Chaya. And Chaya connotes the idea of being alive. Chaya is the feminine form of the Hebrew Chaim, which means life. This name seems to be so emblematic of how Evelyn lived her life. She lived with longevity. She lived with love for her most important treasures in her primary relationships. She also lived a life of humility, faith, and absolute dignity. And this is her legacy. And may we continue to be inspired by her, this wonderful role model. We thank God for all the blessings which you, Adonai, have bestowed upon us in the person Chaika bat Hershel Vehinda, Tehei nafsha tzura b'tzura chaim. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. I said earlier, if anybody wants to put on gloves, you're welcome to do so. There's some over there. But we're now going to proceed with what I think are the most essential parts of the funeral service. This is known as a chesed shel emet, the purest form of kindness that we can bestow on a loved one. And we treat everyone in the very same way. It's a form of showing that this is a democratic situation, but it's also a way to demonstrate to our loved one, somebody who committed a life to offering kindness, that she can now be the recipient of our kindness. So in our tradition, we take the shovel and we hold it in this unusual manner, upside down. I'll say this politely, it's a way to say to God, we're disappointed with your decision, God. But we end up placing the earth on top of it as a sign that we acquiesce to God's decision. We have no idea why God does what God chooses to do, but we have a certain level of faith that there must be some cosmic plan. We hold it in this way. 3 times place earth, and then you turn it back to its ordinary grip and do this twice. And we're very clear about placing the shovel down. As I see it, it allows the next individual to have their turn in this sacred space and to honor that individual. And it's important stuff. So I'm going to ask the family, there's at least 2 shovels. We can do this simultaneously, one on here, on this side, and one on the other. We're going to conclude our service first with the chanting of the El Malei Rachmim, the memorial prayer, and then we will end with the recitation of the Mourner's Kaddish. El Malei Rachamim Ashocheim Bamromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Shechina B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utorim K'zora Kiyamazirim Et Nishmat Chayka Bat Hershel V'Hinda Shelcha Le'olama B'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchata Ana Balerachamim Hastireha B'Setek Nafecha Le'olamim Utzor B'Tra Chaim Et Nishmata Adonai hu nachlata v'tanuach b'shalom hamishkava v'nomar amen. Together with Floyd and Hanisu, we will recite the Mourner's Kaddish. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah ve'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yamechon Chaye b'chol beit Yisrael, Agala v'zman kariv v'yimaru, Amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach leolam umei almaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitfa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata Damiran de'amar v'yimaru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'akol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. Seh shalom v'ramav hu yaseh aleinu v'akol Yisrael amen. This concludes our service. Before we move to our various vehicles, I just want to remind everyone that there is an important tradition that when someone who's dear to you or dear to someone you care about, we are encouraged to give tzedakah in their memory. And so the family is asked that if you choose to do so, you do that to any charity that is meaningful to you. So that's one thing. The other thing I want to say is we offer our condolences by reciting this traditional verse, and I'll say it first in Hebrew and then I'll translate in English. Say, Hamakom yinachem etchem betoch shar avlei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May God, who's referred to here as the place, the location, continue to be with you and all of the mourners of Zion, Jerusalem, and throughout the entire world. And the last thing I want to say, and this might seem a little counterintuitive, but it's very Jewish, and I think Evelyn would have approved. In Judaism, we don't rapidly leave the mourning process, but we slowly try to circle our way back to embracing life in the way that your mom taught us how to do. And so I want to say that tonight is Shabbat. So I'd like to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. May it be a Shabbat of peace and tranquility. And thank you for giving me this honor to be here with you. Be well.